Numbers, statistics, science, and everything else tell us that the future is urban. And because the future is urban, that is not something we can argue with or we can change. But we can change what type of urban it is going to be. As people move into cities and townships, are they going to live in organized, decent housing places, or they are going to live in slums? The choice is for us to make. And that is why this meeting is very important, so that we can shape the future of humanity as they move into urban areas. And to be able to do that, already the numbers show that there is a shortage of 53 million houses already. And therefore, there is the challenge of people moving into urban settlements. There is already the big challenge of shortage of houses. But we can turn this challenge into an opportunity. An opportunity to create jobs, and an opportunity to create construction value chains, an opportunity for investment, and that is why DFIs are in the equation, and an opportunity for us to make a difference in human development. And therefore, this morning offers us a platform and an opportunity for us to turn this human challenge of housing into opportunity for investment, an opportunity for doing business, an opportunity for growing jobs. As I told you earlier, in the last 1.5 years, the affordable housing program has created 320,000 jobs. That is supposed to scale up to 650,000 jobs by the end of this year and 1 million jobs by next year. That comes with many other benefits. The whole space in the construction industry, construction materials, manufacturing of doors, windows, hinges, and all the things that go with it. Adequate housing is the foundation of families to thrive, for children to grow in safety, and for human dignity to be upheld. Yet, the lack of decent housing remains one of the greatest challenges of our time, especially in urban areas where too many families live in conditions of squalor and indignity, or have no home at all. The global housing crisis is too vast for any one country to solve. That is why UN Habitat Assembly Resolution 27 on adequate housing for all is an imperative. It elevates housing as both a human right and a catalyst for sustainable urbanization and development. As we gather for the UN's 80th anniversary, we are reminded of the power of multilateralism. A fit-for-purpose United Nations must be impact-driven and responsive to today's realities. In this vision, UN Habitat is indispensable, linking global aspirations to local transformation. Excellencies, allow me to highlight four urgent priorities. Number one, we must fully implement Resolution 27, embedding housing in national development strategies and recognizing it as essential to SDG, climate resilience, and social equity. Second, we must mobilize scaled up, unpredictable financing through stronger support for UN Habitat, partnership with financial institutions, and innovative models that match the scale of the challenge we have in housing. And third, we must forge coalitions for action, uniting governments, cities, the private sector, and communities to make housing a reality, not just an aspiration. And finally, we must align with related UN initiatives, especially Resolution 22 on transforming informal settlements, and the Building Climate Resilience with Urban Poor initiative, which Kenya and Brazil proudly co-lead. Excellencies, Kenya's affordable housing program is driven by the conviction that every citizen deserves the dignity of a decent home. Our ambition is to build 200,000 affordable houses each year, not just as shelter, but as engines of job creation, urban renewal, and equity. Today, nearly 170,000 units are under construction, as you have seen, creating 320,000 jobs, and this number will double to 650 before the end of the year. Very well ahead of our program. We have also enacted enabling legislation, notably the Affordable Housing Act of 2024, which established the Affordable Housing Fund. Sat with President Mahama, he asked me, how are you funding? This is through the housing levy, matched by employers. We are mobilizing resources now, transforming informal settlements into vibrant, dignified communities. At the same time, we have expanded access to finance. The Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company provides concessional fixed-rate mortgages to thousands of low and middle-income families, making ownership a reality for many who were once excluded. And the Kenya Refinance Mortgage Facility, we got the support of Africa Development Bank to boost it together, and also the World Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, these efforts in Kenya must be seen as within the bigger context that while progress is possible, the financing gap remains vast. Across Africa and beyond, the scale of need dwarfs available resources. Without adequate and predictable financing, adequate and affordable housing will remain out of reach for many. That is why this dialogue this morning matters. It is not just to share experience, but to rally political will and mobilize resources. I propose that today's gathering be remembered as the launch of a Champions Initiative for Adequate Housing, a platform for leadership, advocacy, financing, and accountability. I would want to encourage countries and institutions, as we participate in this space, we will also be doing other additional things. For Kenya, we are reducing on land fragmentation. We are organizing our cities to make sure that we can offer services that make our cities livable, whether it is wastewater management, sewage management, provision of roads, and other social infrastructure, including schools, markets, hospitals. It is important for us to know that those living in informal settlements pay more for water. They pay more for electricity. In certain instances, they pay even to use basic services like toilets. And therefore, we owe it to humanity for us to assemble whatever resources that we can, harness all the political goodwill that we can, build every other social goodwill that we can find so that we can deliver on this program. I am very confident that what we have done in Kenya in the last year and a half, it is possible for us to do it everywhere and to scale up so that UN Habitat, with their mandate, global mandate, we can piggyback on their infrastructure and not just learn from the experiences of what others have done, but also use it so that we can scale up action. And I want to appreciate all those who have found time this morning to come so that we can share these moments together. It is about humanity, and it speaks to the UN 80, that as we look at the infrastructure of the UN, it is important for us to find space for the reform of this institution so that it can measure up to the demands of a rapidly changing global dynamic. Kenya, as the host of the UN Habitat, stands ready to work with each and every one of you on a joint roadmap with clear targets, milestones, and transparent reporting before the next assembly. We will align with Resolution 22 on informal settlements and the Building Climate Resilience within Urban Poor initiative, ensuring commitments translate into real change for the most vulnerable. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our success will not be measured by the pledges we make, but by the communities we uplift, the roofs we raise, and the dignity we restore. Housing must not be a privilege for the few who can afford. It must become the lived reality of all human beings.
I'm humbled to be part of the discussion here today, encouraged and fortified in my own resolve, because Kenya is doing it. We are coming right along. Ghana is also in the process. And the huge housing deficit that Africa has, as UN Habitat has so accurately mapped it out for us over the years, we hope will soon become a thing of the past. And human rights will now move from the text, from word to deed, as we translate the maxims and precepts enshrined in constitutions into bold and courageous actions to deliver quality, affordable, decent housing.
Let me express how impressed I am at the effort that our brothers and sisters in Kenya are making to provide affordable housing. I was very impressed when I watched the video, and I asked President Ruto, I said, but how are you funding this? And so he's giving me a few tips, which I hope that I can go back to Ghana with. Housing is a basic human need, and indeed it is important if our people are to live in dignity. Unfortunately, because of other pressing budgetary needs, education, health, agriculture, and so on, often housing is relegated to the background. I think with the help of UN Habitat, Shelter Afrique, and all that, this is the time for us to reposition the issue of housing so that our people can get decent places to live. In Ghana, the biggest cost to every household is accommodation. Because of the shortage of housing, the landlords take a premium in terms of rent. And so people with salaries are called to make rent advances of 1 year and 2 years before they can get a place to lay their head. A housing deficit of 2.8 million homes. We've cut that down to about 1.8, but still there's a lot of pressure for people to own their own homes. Now there's a question about affordable housing and low-cost housing. We have done several affordable housing projects, but however we try, because of the high cost of building materials, a home comes typically at a cost of about $50,000. Now, is $50,000 for a home affordable? Look at what the living wage is in different countries to be able to determine that. And so often you find that it is the rich, the middle class that snap up these houses, and more ordinary people are not able to afford them. So what is agitating our minds is how to bring the homes in at a lower cost. And like my brother said, land is one of the main issues. And so if government takes off the cost of land from the house, you reduce the cost of the house by a very significant percentage. And so that's one of the things that we have adopted, and I'm happy that he spoke about it. Aside from that, we are separating affordable housing from low-cost housing. Low-cost housing can be done with local materials and bring it in at a much lower cost, especially for the districts and the rural areas. While for the more standard housing, apartments and so on and so forth, they are more suited to an urban environment.
Allow me to begin by expressing my deep appreciation to His Excellency President William Ruto for his leadership. His initiative in launching the Global Call to Action for Adequate Housing reinforces the global momentum we are seeing and provides a rallying point for governments, partners, and communities to work together. Everybody already said, housing is not simply about shelter. So housing determines whether families can escape poverty, whether women and girls can live with dignity and safety, and whether cities can grow in ways that are inclusive, resilient, and low carbon. Adequate housing is a social infrastructure, and it underpins progress across all of the Sustainable Development Goals. This is why the situation we face today is so urgent. Nearly 3 billion people live in inadequate housing, including more than 1 billion in informal settlements and over 300 million experiencing homelessness. At the high-level dialogues convened this year at the resumed United Nations Habitat Assembly and jointly with the president of ECOSOC at the margin of the high-level political forum, one message came through strongly. Housing is no longer seen as a sectoral issue, but as a platform for poverty eradication, equality jobs, resilience, and peace. The housing crisis is a defining challenge of our time. For this reason, countries in all regions are increasingly placing housing at the center of the political agenda. We just heard from 3. The European Union, for example, nominated its first ever commissioner for housing and launched the development of an European affordable housing plan. In line with the Vision 2063, the African Union highlighted the importance of housing for the economic transformation of the continent in the outcome of the first African Forum held in Addis in 2024. We also heard that financing remains a critical challenge. We heard the example of Kenya, of the housing levy. Public resources are absent, but powerful tools are not yet fully harnessed. Land-based finance, cooperative housing funds, community saving schemes could unlock vast potential for sustainable investment. Equally important, member states underscore the need to support diverse production models, from large-scale national programs to community-led and self-built solutions, and to place security of tenure at the heart of housing efforts. The good news is that for the first time, the international community has a global platform to confront this crisis together. Through the resolutions of the Second United Nations Habitat Assembly in 2023, 190 countries created the open-ended Intergovernmental Expert Working Group on Adequate Housing for All. We have the honor to have the co-chairs here, Minister Tani, France, Kenya are the co-chairs of the open-ended working group on adequate housing for all. With the facilitation of UN Habitat, this mechanism enables governments to share practices, develop guidelines, align financing with real needs, and transform fragmented initiatives into coordinated action at global, national, and local levels.